Welcome to the Disrupted Podcast, where we analyze and discuss technology that's changing the world as we know it. My guest with me here is Tochiko, who's currently a student of University of Maryland and also a software engineer for Microsoft. Before we get started, Tochiko, I'm really excited for this conversation today. But before we jump right into it, could you give us a quick explanation of who you are, a background?
Mm. So, like you said, my name is Tochukwu Ibe Ekiocha. Most people call me Toch. Like you said, I'm a student at the University of Maryland College Park. And just to correct, because I know I can get in trouble if it's not completely stated. So I'm a software engineering intern at Microsoft. I interned there last summer, and I'm going to be interning there again this summer. But yeah, I'm a student. I'm a computer science student, junior. I'm in my junior year, but I also do freelance. I've been doing freelance for at least I'd say 3 years now. I'm just managing different clients, working on different software engineering projects, building applications, stuff like that. And, I also have a YouTube channel, TOCHI space IBE. So if you want to check out my content, I make content about my progress throughout the software development industry.
The link is definitely going to be in the description. So whoever wants to go
Yeah.
check out his channel, is really good stuff on there that helps software developers. But yeah, keep going on.
Awesome. So yeah, I do that. That's pretty much who I am as far as, software development, software engineering goes.
Yeah, that sounds like a really, really good background. So just on your background, what would you say, again, high level, just a high level, what would you say is the toughest project you've worked on as a software engineer? Just high level description. You don't have to go in depth.
Toughest project I've worked on. It's definitely my Microsoft internship. So I was on the Edge browser team. So I got to get an inside look of what that ecosystem is like. And the new Edge browser, obviously, it's based on the Chromium engine. And so, just walking into that massive code base, I'd never seen anything like that before, getting accustomed to the technologies they use, the methodologies that they use, and all of that. That's definitely to date, the most challenging project that I've done. Yeah.
Wow, that sounds like a really cool and fun project. But yeah, so again, I know this next question is kind of a broad question. It's
Mm.
really broad. So I just want to ask you, in your own words, what is software, especially now in the internet era? How would you define software?
Wow. Um, so you can't define software without computers, right?
Mhm.
So you need a computer, you need an operating system that understands instructions and how to perform instructions. And once you have a computer, once you have an operating system, then on top of that, you can have software. And, even to a degree, the operating system is a type of software itself. Pretty much the most general explanation I would say is any piece of instructions that you can give to a computer and have it execute and to do something, that's software. It can be as simple as that, and it doesn't even have to be a computer in the sense of, a laptop or a desktop. It could be like a microcontroller, an
Mhm.
Arduino, a refrigerator,
Yeah.
things, run software, a microphone, like, it could run some kind of software, depending on what type of microphone it is. So yeah, that's pretty much how I would define software.
Yeah, from one software engineer to another, that's actually a really, really good definition of software. So I feel like most people don't really understand what software is. Whenever the word software comes up, they think it's just one thing. They don't know it's like a massive, massive field of just different things. Like pretty much anything can be software. As long as it runs on some kind of hardware, it's considered software. So yeah, but again, going back in history a little bit, I know we can't exactly say, hey, this was the point in time where software started. That's a hard definition, or that's a hard place in history to point to. But I feel like starting more from the internet era, right? So the Ethernet, from my understanding, was invented in I believe 1974, when it was just two computers connected to each other by way of wire, which is called the Ethernet. And
Mm.
it didn't really get popular till about the 19s, like 1991 till like 1999, where companies like Amazon, Netflix, Google came up and started adopting the internet actually. But now is widely, it's kind of widely used, right? Pretty much almost nobody can do. We're like totally dependent on the internet right now. So it's just, in my opinion, it's really crazy how much software has grown and how big a part of our life software plays. What do you think about that?
That's definitely true. I mean, at this point, almost everything has been automated using some kind of software. Lots of industries, obviously the one that I'm in, the one that you're in, are completely built entirely around software, at least certain parts of it for you. So yeah, the world pretty much runs on software. Sorry, I'm kind of blanking. What was the first part? Is it just like my reaction to the
Yeah,
world of
just your
software?
opinion. Yeah, just your opinion on that. So which you pretty much gave. Yeah, we were just
Mhm.
talking about how big software has grown. If you had to point back to a time, obviously in the past decade or two, maybe where software really exploded, like what would you say that was?
Past decade or two, software explode. I'd say the first that comes to my mind is probably the dot-com bubble. Even though I don't understand everything about it, right? Because that first of all, that was probably either before I was born or when I was an infant. I haven't looked into it too much, but pretty much domains were popular. The internet was kind of young back then, right? And everybody wanted to have an
Yep,
online business.
yep,
As soon as you have an online business, you have a domain name, a place people can go to see you online, right? That had a lot
yep,
of value. Like even
yep.
till today, the effects of it are still spread. Like try good luck finding a domain name for your business idea that
So true,
that's
so true, so true.
that,
They're all taken.
they're almost all taking,
Yeah,
so the effects of it is still felt today. So that was probably a really big time where there was a lot of growth. Yeah, that's pretty much the biggest one that I can think of on the
yeah,
spot at the moment.
yeah. I
Just the
totally
dot-com
agree.
bubble.
Yeah, I totally
Hmm.
agree. So back in, I think the bubble was in 1999, 2000, 2001,
Hmm.
where everyone was pretty much saying, "Hey, the internet is gonna be the future. Internet is gonna be this," and they were right. They were right about the future, but they were wrong about the timing. Okay, you
Hmm.
see the technologies back then weren't ripe for what people were investing so much in it, but it
Yeah.
wasn't ripe for what it was meant to do yet. Okay, so what
Hmm.
happened was that the dot-com crash happened in the market, lasted for a little bit. It took about 10 years for companies to get back to the levels of valuation they were at the dot-com bubble. Okay, in 2000,
Hmm.
it took to about 2010. And in my opinion, 2010 is also the second time software really exploded, because this was back, Apple came out with the iPhone in
Hmm.
about 2007. I believe this sparked what I call the mobile revolution. I believe I forgot who the guy who's coined this clause or phrases, but it's software is leaping from our desks to our pockets. Okay.
Hmm.
It was pretty much software moving from computers, desktops, laptops, now to our phones. Okay. So pretty much software became a huge part of our life from 2010, when everyone started moving to smartphones, thanks to Apple and Steve Jobs. It became a huge part of our lives, and the sales of like computers and laptops have been declining ever since. But the sale of mobile devices has just kept going up. And these days, it almost
Hmm.
feels like my phone is actually an extension of myself. Like it's always there,
Hmm.
So I was listening. I was reading a article the other day that says we are more or less cyborgs now, because our phone is an extension of us. We can say, "Hey Siri, do this. Hey Siri, do that. Hey Siri," and it does it for us. So that is pretty much the definition of a cyborg. Like
Hmm.
what do you think about that statement?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with it. Like, I never go anywhere without my phone. It's always beside me. And, there's lots of people, that are, oh, I mean, pretty much anybody in this country or any other first world country heavily reliant on their devices. You can pay with your phones nowadays,
Yep.
you can make money with your phones,
Mm-hmm.
Instagram, all that kind of stuff, right? So it's definitely.
So yeah, sorry for what happened. I think we got cut off network connection, but yeah, we're gonna pick up where we left off. So
Yeah.
just a quick question for you. How do you think COVID, the COVID crisis back in 2020 last year, how do you think that affected the growth of software?
I think it did a lot of positive things for it, primarily because, now physically people were less connected, right? Obviously, because they couldn't move around, nobody's commuting to work and all that kind of stuff,
Correct.
right?
Hmm.
So everyone had to rely on technology, had to rely on the internet, had to rely on software, right? In order to
Hmm.
be able to function in their daily lives, right? So we've seen industries that previously existed, that have grown exponentially throughout COVID, like for example, Zoom, it's a company that people use, like it's normal now, like kind of how you say Google, that kind of stuff, right? Some people view Zoom in that same
Yeah,
way,
you,
right?
it used to be Skype. I don't know what happened to Skype.
Yeah, I had
Now Zoom.
I'm not gonna comment or laugh about that just because of who owns Skype, but
Oh,
you know,
sure. I forgot about that.
we'll, we'll just leave it at that. Anyways,
True.
um, so yeah, you know, there's Zoom that's like very popular. Other options include like Teams, Microsoft Teams.
Oh yeah, that's a good one
Yeah,
too.
it's
That's a good
it's
one too.
another popular one. There's Google Hangouts or like Google Meets, which they made. I think they made it free for everyone. Like
Yep.
during COVID. Previously, I don't think it was free. I think it was only if you had a G Suite account, you got access to that. But you know, at some point during last year, during COVID, they actually made it free just to show
Hmm.
how big of a shift, you know, like the video calling, you know, how big it affected the video calling industry and the software that's used to make that. But even aside from that, like as someone who works in the industry, right? Like
Mm.
freelancing, you know, when a lot of people were, you know, losing their jobs, unfortunately, or people who are losing internships, which you know that happened. That was a big thing that was happening, especially you know like in you know the summer of 2020, the spring to summer of 2020, just because of everything that was going on. You know, I was never in a situation where I was very worried about being able
Hmm.
to make money, right? Because you know I have my freelance, which I do through Upwork, which is an online platform that lets you meet clients and work completely remotely, right?
Hmm.
So and even you know I've made a bunch of videos on my channel about that, and you know I completely I think I support that way of working, right? Working remotely. I think that's like pretty much you know where the future is going to be, right? Where things are
Hmm.
heading towards, that kind of stuff. So yeah, going back to my point, you know, being someone who works in the industry, right? Like I saw, you know, for the most part, people who were full-time employed, right, were still able to continue the jobs they were doing, people in the software industry, because you know it's easy to continue to perform even online, right? Because at the end of the day, like I've worked in person opportunities, I've worked, you know, obviously I've worked remote opportunities. A lot of the things you
Hmm.
do are the same. Like even like my first ever actual job was, you know, I was doing an internship at this company. It was a software engineering role, and like you know my manager was on a floor above me, right? And whenever we wanted to communicate, we'd either, and even with some of the people that were in the same room as me, like the same
Hmm.
office as me, you know, we would use Slack, right? We would be
Hmm.
chatting through Slack. We would be, and if I wanted to talk to my manager who was upstairs, you know, we do a call through Hangouts or something, right? So as soon
Hmm.
as COVID hit, guess what? Pretty much doing the exact same thing, except I'm in my pajamas and I may or may not have pants on, you know,
True.
depending
True.
on so,
True. I can
you know,
relate. I can relate.
so so it was pretty much the, you know, the workflow didn't change too much, just the setting that changed. And I think a bunch of people, I think a bunch of companies, and as you see, like the big tech giants, they started announcing, oh, they were moving completely remotely, and you know
Hmm.
they intend to keep that option open, you know, for employees for the foreseeable future. And so I think it opened their eyes that, you know, that this industry, you know, like working remotely in
Hmm.
software is something that can work for this industry more or less.
Yeah, I totally agree. I agree with every point you made. This COVID crisis caused every company that survived to be a tech company, meaning that they had to pick up the internet. Even companies that didn't really want to pick up the internet, they had to. And speaking of Slack, I really like Slack. I've used it a few times. I know it was purchased by Salesforce, Mark Benioff, in an all-stock deal, I believe sometime in 2020. The purchase went through. So I thought it was a pretty good deal, in my opinion. But yeah, so what I've learned in history, times of war or crisis changes how we do things forever, changes it radically. In 2020, there was a war. COVID was a war. We were fighting a war not against humans, but against a disease, against the pandemic, against the virus. And it pretty much caused the paradigm shift from, like you said, from the person to person interaction to more of a global interaction, more of a internet-based interaction, more of a virtual interaction. So I feel like now it is essential for everyone into this world to have some kind of digital footprint, have some kind of social media account, have some kind of a digital presence, pretty much, because that is the new normal. That is what we're transitioning into. And yeah, most of the tech companies, if not all of them, now have some kind of work from home policy, like you said. So even though there were bad parts to COVID and overall it was bad, so many people lost jobs, people died from it, but However, some good did come out of it. This more of a global environment. Now we're a lot more connected than we were pre-COVID, and I think this is the new normal. This is how it's going to be. And like you said, platforms like Upwork are pretty much positioned for success in this new environment. I feel the 9 to 5 way of living and working is gone. I mean,
Mhm.
it wouldn't just go quick like that. It's gonna be gradually, but I feel like in the next 5 years, it's gonna be gone. People are now gonna work in chunks. You go on Upwork, pick up a contract, go do that, then chill. Whenever you need some more money, go back on Upwork, pick up a few contracts, get paid, chill. So this kind of forces us to have to be an expert in something, and someone like yourself who's an expert in software engineering, I believe that's a necessary skill for this new normal we're transitioning into, for this new world we're transitioning into. And speaking of necessary skills, so based on your experience, what would you say are the top software platforms? Say a guy who's just or girl who's just graduating from high school looking for a career in college, software-based career. What platforms would you advise them to focus their energy on? What platforms do you think are going to lead the future in this space?
So, what do you mean when you say platform exactly? Are we talking like coding skills, languages, like a tech stack, or are we talking like, like an AWS, Azure or GCP? Just
I get you. I know that's a really broad question, and it's probably a whole video
Mhm.
of its own. But just feel free to answer it however you feel.
Okay.
Just give a young guy. Right now, I'm a high school student. I'm just getting ready to graduate. I come to you for advice. What advice would you give me to prepare me for this new world we're transitioning
Mhm.
into?
The first thing I would say to do is to build your skills, right? So you have an
Hmm.
interest into getting into the software development industry. You have to build your skills, and I would recommend going online, like to a YouTube, or if you have the cash to spare, maybe a Udemy, get a few courses, play around, try to find, because software development is such a big area, right? There's like there's high level programming, there's low level programming, and that's
True.
another thing we can get into and talk to for a long time, right? But for a high
True.
school student, I would recommend to start with something that's high level, right? So I'm
Hmm.
talking like the easiest one I would say is like a JavaScript. Start with like a JavaScript, then do the web development stack more or less, right?
So that's
um
like a JavaScript, HTML,
and
CSS,
CSS,
React,
exactly.
Angular. Does that
Yeah,
include
yeah,
those
you
two?
can. Yeah, you can get into React, Angular. Those are like frameworks once you have solid fundamentals, right? Another approach you can take is, you can, if you want to do more enterprise, although I won't recommend that for someone who's just starting out, right? Like maybe
Hmm.
go into like a Java. Reason I won't
Yeah.
recommend doing like a Java or even a C++ or like a Rust, all these languages that fit into that category is that, these are more geared towards like enterprise and geared towards working for someone else, right? Just because they're all compiled languages, and they in order to build, and it's longer to write code, right? So in order to build something useful, like let's say you wanted
Hmm.
to build the same exact thing with like a Java versus a JavaScript, right? The same
Hmm.
exact app, in JavaScript, maybe you can write it in like 50 lines of code or something. In Java, it'll probably be like 150 or 200 or 300, right? And usually the ways you can apply it to is it's much more restricted in Java. But I'll leave it at that, right? So I'll say start with a JavaScript, learn the web stack, or you can also do a Python too. That's another language that's similar, that has an ecosystem that's easy to approach as well and easy to navigate through. So do that, learn your skills, learn those fundamentals. And then the next thing I'd say is build projects, like get a portfolio of projects. You can either follow YouTube tutorials and build, code as they code. And then, if you're done with the tutorial, maybe you extend it, you add a new feature or two, right? But, get like 2 or 3 projects underneath your belt that you can put on a portfolio. I highly recommend getting a GitHub. And just keep your code there, and just understanding Git in general is really good, because in the industry, Git is pretty much used all the time.
Yeah.
And Git is a version control software for anyone who may not know what that is. And it's spelled GIT. And so, yeah, so you use GitHub because one, it lets you keep track of all your code and the projects you make, and it also lets you easily share it with, potential recruiters or anyone, right? So let's say you've done this and you're now in college, the next thing I would highly recommend is that you go ahead and set up a website for yourself. It really doesn't cost too much. The average college student can definitely afford to pay, hosting for a year. I think for me, my website costs like 150 a year or something for hosting. And I build it. I use like a WordPress or something to build it, which is another thing that I would recommend. Like, even though I'm a software developer and I can build websites from scratch. I don't do that for my website, my personal website, just because you want your personal website to be able to change pretty quickly, and you want to be able to make updates to it fast. And if you're building it from scratch, it just takes you longer to make quick changes. Just get something, use something like a WordPress or a Wix, and just call it a day. It makes it easy for you to manage your website. So I recommend doing that, pay for the hosting and just put it up there. I also highly recommend getting on LinkedIn. Anyone who knows me knows that I do a lot on LinkedIn. I pretty much post, maybe weekly. At some point, it was definitely weekly. Right now, maybe it's like once every 2 weeks or something, just because I'm kind of like, I have a lot of things to do, more or less.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I highly recommend doing that. I highly recommend, just and on LinkedIn you can start posting things about your experience, right? Like projects that you're building, things you're working on, things you're learning. I highly recommend this because you do that long enough, you get to a point where, recruiters just start reaching out to you, right? Like,
True,
um
true.
I get that, a lot. Like, you'd be, if I pulled up my LinkedIn page right now, you'd be surprised the amount of recruiters that, send me messages that I just ignore because, I can't get to all of them, right? One, because, I already have a position for the summer, and two, like, I just can't get to all of them. And, some of them I may not be fit for, right? But yeah, there's a number of them in there. So I recommend doing that. And I also recommend getting on this thing called jumpstart.me. It's also
Mhm.
another great website where you can meet potential recruiters, and, get potential internship opportunities, right? That's on the end of, if you want to market yourself, that's like marketing yourself, putting the work you're doing out there so that you can be discovered. Moving back onto your skills and your progress, yeah, just keep on building different projects you can build. I highly recommend, building an idea of your own. Maybe like you have a cool startup idea, regardless of whether or not, it's going to be the next Facebook. You're going to learn a lot. Speaking from my own experience, right? You're going to learn a lot from that experience, and it's going to help you in so many different ways, right? So
Mhm.
maybe think of an idea that's fairly complex and build it out thoroughly, right? Like the one project, a startup that I still work on till this day, a Skiffle. I can't tell you how much wonders it's done on my resume. As far as like opportunities that I apply to, I put that there, and that's a real world project that's out there, and that's something that's really helped me a lot as far as making me appear as a strong candidate, and also also having skills, right? Because a lot of the skills I learned from that project I've taken and I've applied to a lot of the freelance work that I've been doing. So yeah, I'd say do that. Another option would be maybe get into freelancing. It's another thing I highly recommend. So once you
Mhm.
have the skills, so at this point, if you've done everything I said, you have the skills, you have your website and your GitHub that showcases your project, you know, getting into freelance, you pretty much have all the ingredients to get started in freelancing, right? So you get in there, you start on like a website like an Upwork, which I use a lot, or like a freelancer.com or a Fiverr, which these are there's a number of different options. And you just list your, you create a profile, and you
Mhm.
just start searching for clients and doing that kind of stuff. That's pretty much, I know that that's a lot.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much that's what has worked well for me the most, right? And
Mhm.
that's what I would advise anybody who's thinking about coming into to do. Hopefully that didn't scare them away from it.
He probably did.
how much stuff how much stuff it
Probably
was, it
did.
didn't scare them away from it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
just to give you an idea of how long it's taken me to get where I am, I've been doing all of this stuff, over the course of, I'd say, the past 4 to 3 years. So it does take some time, and there's no expectation that you do it in a month or 2 months. Take your time, build it up, especially if you're just starting college, you have the time, right? So yeah.
True. That's actually really good advice. Yeah, yeah. I'm starting to kind of build up my Upwork right now. Because
Mhm,
I feel like it could be a really, really good side hustle, especially for me. It's work you could do at your time, to an extent at your pace.
mhm,
But yeah, you could just pick up contracts whenever you feel. Obviously, you have to build up your resume for that, right? So clients can trust you with work. But
mhm,
once you have your resume built out, I feel like it could be a really excellent sort of consistent side hustle. But yeah, you went through, you gave a lot of great advice, talked about a few companies. So what companies, in your opinion, would you say are positioned for success in this new world from a software standpoint? Because let's face it, software is only gonna keep getting bigger and bigger. Okay, we're
mhm,
gonna keep using software more and more and more and more. Software is gonna be in every single aspect of our life, based on my belief.
mhm,
So, what companies do you? So from an investing point of view, someone who wants to go out and invest in some of these winning companies, what companies would you advise?
mhm. I'm just to put it out there, I'm not, an official,
Financial
broker or
advisor.
financial
Yeah.
advisor, right?
Yeah. So
And
so don't take this as financial advice.
yeah, yeah,
This is
definitely
just you
don't do
speaking
that
about
about my
what you're
opinions,
doing,
right?
what your
So I
opinions are.
guess, yeah. So I guess one thing I can say is maybe talk a bit about some of the investments that I've made myself, right?
Yeah,
Which
that'll be a good start.
obviously I pick, I try to pick the winners, right? So companies like, I mean, obviously Apple. I think, if
That's
we're
a good one.
talking software giants, Apple is a
That's a
big
really good
company.
one. Yeah.
They have a number of things that they're doing, they're working on. There's like the news about the Apple car and stuff, and they just it's a safe place to stash your money. I can't, again, I'm not an expert, so I can't say all the little things that they're working on or all the ways that they're going to grow whatever, right? But so far it's been working
Sure.
for me, right?
Hmm.
Another one that I'm into is Tesla.
That's a good
So
one. That's a good
yeah,
one.
I
I
think
love Tesla.
yeah, I think with their cars, I think I've seen like some of like their dashboards, like they have in their cars. It's almost like 100% like just software, right?
Yep.
They have like games in there, so I think kind of like you said, how Apple revolutionized the application industry and soft apps more or less. They pretty much made apps what they are today, right? And how we know them
Exactly.
today. I think
Exactly.
Tesla will do something similar for cars and like how we consume content in our cars and stuff. So Tesla might be a huge platform that depending on how they execute, right? They
Exactly.
might
It
be a
always depends on
huge,
execution.
yeah,
Yep.
they might be a huge platform where people start consuming software from. What else? Microsoft, obviously, it's one of the biggest ones. They're doing a lot. They're one of the biggest cloud providers in the world today. Like the top three are like AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud Platform. Maybe not necessarily in that order, but yeah, they pretty much do backend. They do a lot of infrastructure as a service, backend as a service, software as a service. They have a lot of those features, and obviously Amazon too would be another safe bet. AWS is one of their biggest cash cows. And
Yep.
then Google, and I mean, obviously it's Google, right? Pretty
Yep.
much one of the
Yep.
biggest names, the biggest staple out there. I'd say those companies. There's yeah. I think that's as much as I'm willing to. That's as much information I'm willing to safely give. I'm staying within my realm of things that I remotely understand.
Yeah, I get you.
That's
It's called a circle of competence, I guess.
exactly that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll remember that. Yeah, I have to
Yeah.
remember that. My
Yeah.
circle of competence. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good. Those are really good companies. And yeah, times like this, you really want to back the winners, the proven winners. Like you said, Microsoft has proven they're a winner. Apple has proven they're a winner. Tesla is proving right now. Again, like you said, depends on execution, but so far they have a great CEO and they've been executing good. But hopefully they keep executing good for the future. So Amazon is a proven winner. So you want to back the winners. Some other stocks I like around this software. I like Upwork. I feel like we're
Oh
moving
yeah,
towards a
too.
work from
I'm
home.
actually invested in that too. Sorry to cut you off, but yeah, that's a
No,
good
you're good.
one
You're good.
too.
So
Yeah.
yeah, Upwork, Fiverr. The more we transition to this work from home digital era, the more the companies like that are gonna succeed. So I also like how you brought up the cloud. You see, software engineer myself, I don't have too good of an understanding on what the cloud is. So to conclude this video, could you kind of give us like a brief explanation on what the cloud is and your prediction for software and the cloud as a whole for the future?
This is a good time to use what things I've learned recently. So I'm gonna try and stick within my circle of competence here because I
Mm,
definitely don't understand everything there is to know about the cloud, right? But I understand it from a perspective of I've worked with it. Specifically, I've worked to a um well, I'm having a brain fart now. I've worked I've worked closely or for a long time I've worked with one of the cloud providers, right? Which is the GCP. Have been using it for a number of projects. There are a number of projects that I'm going to use it for, et cetera, right? So from my understanding, the cloud is pretty much, big companies like the Googles, the Amazons, and the
Microsoft.
Microsofts, they have
Mhm.
large, gigantic computer centers, right? Just like buildings that have nothing but computers, servers, et cetera, right? And what they allow people to do is they allow people to use rather than, let's say I want to start a company today, rather than me having to go, buy my own servers, buy my own machines and administer over the servers and, do all the things to make sure that, like managing instances, scaling up, scaling down, it can get very complex. I don't understand that process completely. Rather than do that, they handle all that for you. Like you can, so even though it's called a cloud, like it's more, it's like more like a metaphor. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but let's use that like a metaphor, right? So it's
Mhm.
more the idea that you can build your applications, you can build your company, you can build your software without having to worry about infrastructure. You just go to these companies, you pay them, and they provide you the infrastructure. So the way I've worked with it mostly is through like this tool called Firebase that
Mhm.
Google offers, and so it offers you things like a database that you can use, right? So it's pretty much you store data that's relevant to the business application of your of your to the business logic of your application, right? It's stored on their computers somewhere. You don't even know where it's stored for the most part. You might know the region, depending on how you want the latency to function and stuff like that, right? But you
Mhm.
don't know, for the most part, you don't know exactly where it is, and you just use the database that they offer you, right?
Mhm.
Another feature they offer is like another popular feature that I think each of the three offer is like serverless functions, right? So that's being able to write server side code, right?
Mhm.
That, it spins up and down depending on how often it's being used. Like, you write like a server, it gets a request, an instance launches up, serves the requests, and then it dies after, right? So that way that this is like a more budget friendly
Mhm.
model because you're not paying for server space that's on all the time on their end. You write the code and then whenever it
Yep.
needs to be used, it comes up, it goes away. That's how that works. That's what I've had experience with the most in the cloud. And yeah, people can build lots of different things, like Docker is something that's very popular in this space because, it lets you deploy and ship applications pretty easily to computers that, are on, the different cloud infrastructure that's managed by these companies.
Mhm.
That's something that if anyone who's thinking of operating in that space a lot, that's something that you definitely need to have a solid understanding of. But yeah, that's pretty much, I hope I did that justice in a way that makes sense. That's pretty much my understanding of the cloud and the ways in which that I've worked with it at this point in my career. Yeah,
Mhm. Do you believe more companies and more businesses are going to transition more towards cloud-based platforms in the near future?
absolutely. I think, at this point, it makes sense. It's the cheapest, or at least it's become very cost effective over the
And it's
years.
safe
It's
too. It's really
become,
safe too.
and it's safe, and that's another great point that you point out, like, and which is one of the advantages of it. Like you don't have to worry about spending time and money hiring people to secure your database.
Yep.
Google already offers you that. Like just knowing that your application is running on Google or Microsoft or Amazon infrastructure, and there's that already built-in level of safety, that lets you sleep easy at night. You don't have to worry about waking up, somebody calling you at 10 a.m. like, oh, the servers are down,
True.
let
True.
call the sysadmin, call the Linux guy or whatever,
True.
right? Everything happens like the only way your business will be down is if like Google shuts down or something, like
True.
something, which is like very, in this world, very unlikely to happen, right? So it
Mhm.
it 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 provides a lot of safety, like you mentioned. It provides a lot of, and the scalability is another big part of it too, right? The
Mhm.
idea that, and a lot of these serverless or these cloud providers, they offer like pay as you go models. So you only pay or pay for what you use. I think that's a more accurate way to describe it, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
if one month your website or your application is getting a lot of hits, it's going to scale up to support those requests.
Mm-hmm.
And if and then you pay for whatever infrastructure you use, and then the next month you don't get as much, it scales down, right? So
Mm-hmm.
allowing you to pretty much, like it says, pay for what you use, and making it more budget friendly. So it's very good for a number of those reasons.
Yeah, yeah, I feel like you hit the nail right on the head with that. That was a very, really, really good explanation. But yeah, it's been a blessing having you on here. It's been really informative for myself, and I'm pretty sure for everyone watching this podcast too. They're gonna learn a lot from this. It's been great having you. Hopefully, we can do this again. But till next time, I hope you have a
Mhm.
really good rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks for having me and sending the invite to join it. It's been really good just getting a chance to talk about these things, and hopefully, like you said, hopefully there's somebody out there who has listened to this podcast and get something and learn something that can be useful for them. So yeah, I was definitely happy to be here.
All right, thank you. Take care.
Yep.